Don't just scroll, hit that subscribe button. Because what you're about to hear was never supposed to leave the walls of America's most secure prison. No one at ADX Florence ever said the fortress was perfect. They only said it was impenetrable. But inside that concrete kingdom, among the hum of fluorescent lights and the whisper of sliding steel doors, a handful of men began to notice the cracks, tiny human cracks that even reinforced concrete couldn't hide. It started with a sound. Officer Daniel Hughes, a 10-year veteran on D range, was walking his night rounds when he heard tapping. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. The noise came from cell B-114, a cell that, according to the roster, had been empty for weeks. He logged it as a pipe knock and moved on. But the next night, it came again. Same rhythm, same eerie precision. As if someone were signaling from inside the wall, Hughes mentioned it to his lieutenant. The lieutenant laughed. ADX doesn't have ghosts, Hughes. It has echoes. But when maintenance opened the utility crawl space behind B-114, they found a tunnel, barely a foot deep, carved from the wall's inner insulation, just large enough to hide a stack of contraband papers wrapped in plastic, pages of handwritten notes, sketches of blueprints, diagrams of ventilation shafts, sally ports, motion sensors. The title written across the first page, "The Fortress Isn't Perfect." The Bureau of Prisons launched an internal probe immediately. The file was marked "Need to Know." Only 6 people saw it. One was Hughes. Another was a federal investigator named Maya Rennick, a former military engineer turned security analyst, flown in from D.C. to quietly assess what the warden refused to call a breach. Rennick arrived in the middle of a blizzard. From the highway, ADX Florence looked like a gray monolith rising from white desolation. "A tomb for the living," she muttered, pressing her ID at the first gate. Inside, the corridor smelled of disinfectant and cold metal. Her escort told her what everyone in Florence already whispered. Someone inside figured out the rhythm of the place. Censor. They wrote the manual on how to make the fortress bleed. Rennick's job was to read that manual. For 3 days, she studied the recovered pages inside a secure office, each one lined in pencil and grease smudges, annotated with precise timing diagrams. Whoever drew them had intimate knowledge of the facility's security grid. The detail was surgical. Airflow cycles, blind spots in camera coverage, lasting exactly 6.4 seconds, microphone distortion zones, even notes on which officers took longer smoke breaks. It wasn't the work of a prisoner guessing from behind glass. It was someone who knew, someone with access. By day 4, she had her list, centered of the data. She called them in one by one, under the guise of a routine security review. Most were nervous, talkative. One wasn't, Officer Hughes. He sat across from her, eyes steady, posture rigid. "You think I wrote it?" he asked. "I think whoever did knew exactly where you were every night for the last 6 months." He smirked. "That's public record. We all sign shift logs. Not the unrecorded rounds, the ones you did log." The silence between them stretched thin as wire. Rennick slid a photograph across the table, the plastic-wrapped packet found in B-114. "You found this?" she said. "Why did you mention the tape used to seal it?" Hughes glanced down. The duct tape was gray with a faint blue stripe. Standard issue maintenance tape, not contraband. The kind only staff carried. He exhaled through his nose. "You're fishing? Then bite," she said softly. He didn't, but the tremor in his left hand betrayed him. That night, surveillance logs recorded something unprecedented in ADX history. At 3:12 a.m., cell C-210 went dark, camera feed dead for exactly 6.4 seconds. When it returned, the prisoner inside, an ex-intelligence contractor named Eli Rourke, was standing at his slot holding a folded note. The next morning, the note surfaced in Rennick's tray, slipped under the door without a trace of who delivered it. It read, "The fortress isn't perfect, and the prisoners know it. You are looking in the wrong direction." Below it, a schematic of the prison's central command hub, the nerve center controlling locks, alarms, and cameras, and a handwritten time. 12:47 p.m., that was 20 minutes from now. Rennick sprinted through the corridors, radio pressed to her ear. "Lockdown H unit, now!" But the command center was already reacting, lights flickering, alarms pulsing, once then dying. On the central console, a looping message flashed in red. "Sisum porques, security recalibration in prayers." Through the observation window, she saw Hughes at the terminal, fingers moving fast across the keyboard, sweat darkening his collar. 2 guards restrained him, shouting, but he kept repeating, "I'm fixing it. Someone's in the system. They're using my access." The screen froze. All locks in D-range disengaged for 8 seconds before backup power slammed them shut again. In that brief span, 3 doors had opened. 2 slammed back closed. 1 did. When they reached D-range, cell D, -119, was empty. Inside were only a stack of papers, blueprints like the ones found behind B-114, and a single line scrawled across the wall in pencil. "Even a fortress has a heartbeat." Just absence. No signs of forced exit. A human void in the place that prided itself on perfection. For the Bureau, it was chaos. For the prisoners, it was revelation. If one man could breach the unbreachable, then maybe the system itself could be made to bleed. And as Rennick stood in the flickering light of the range, she realized something colder than fear settling in her chest. The plan she had been chasing wasn't just a blueprint for escape. It was a manifesto, a warning written from inside the walls, a promise that the fortress had already been compromised. From the inside out, the man who vanished there were rules in ADX Florence, and then there were myths. By morning, both had been broken when the warden gathered the incident team. His voice was low but sharp. "No one leaves this room until I have a name." But that was the problem. The name they needed was the one they did have. The inmate who vanished from cell D-119 wasn't on any active roster. Officially, the cell had been sealed for electrical maintenance. Unofficially, someone had been living there for months. Rennick stood at the edge of the table, staring at the grainy surveillance stills, flickers of static, a brief distortion where the door opened. She replayed the feed in her head. No human figure, no movement, just absence, as if the man had been deleted from the system rather than escaped it. "Run facial recognition," she said. "We did," the tech replied. "Got nothing. Whoever this was, he's a ghost." Hughes was confined to administrative segregation pending investigation. His protests echoed down the tier. "You're making a mistake. I was following protocol. Until they slammed the steel door shut." Rennick requested an interment, not conversation. That only deepened her suspicion. She requested access to the original system logs, the ones before they were overwritten during the security recalibration. What she found chilled her. A single remote command had been executed just seconds before the doors opened. It wasn't from Hughes' terminal. It wasn't even from inside the facility. The IP trace ended in a dead zone, a military network block. Someone outside ADX had reached into its mainframe. That afternoon, she walked the D-range corridor. Even through the glass doors, she could feel the tension, a vibration in the air, the unspoken electricity that spreads through any cage when one of its captives disappears. One inmate, an old Aryan Brotherhood lifer, leaned toward the slit of his door and grinned. "They say the ghost's real now," he rasped. Rennick stopped walking, but she slowed. "What ghost?" "The one who knew the heartbeat." His laugh followed her all the way down the tier. At the end of the range, she stopped at cell D-119. The maintenance crew had removed the wall panel to check for tunnels. Nothing but wiring and insulation, but carved faintly into the concrete floor beneath the bunk was another phrase, thin letters etched by something sharp. Blueprints aren't drawn, they're remembered. That night, Rennick returned to her quarters in the administrative wing. She couldn't shake the feeling that the message was meant for her. Someone inside was playing a long game, and she had walked right into it. When she opened her laptop, a new email was waiting in her encrypted inbox. Unsigned, no sender address, time-stamped to within seconds of the system breach. The subject line read, "He's not gone." The message contained a single attachment, a schematic of the entire ADX facility marked with red annotations. Access tunnels, HVAC lines, and, most disturbingly, a line that led directly from D range to a decommissioned service chamber buried beneath the electrical block. The note under it read, "You'll find what they buried." 7:03. She looked at the time. 6:47. At exactly 7:03, Rennick was standing at the steel access door, beneath the electrical corridor. The air smelled of oil and ozone. 2 maintenance officers followed her down, both nervous. The door's lock had been welded shut years ago, but the scene showed fresh scoring. Someone had cut and resealed it recently. They pried it open. Inside was a narrow service tunnel, dark and dust-choked. At the far end, the beam of Rennick's flashlight caught movement, a flicker of silver. She stepped forward. The object was a metal chair bolted to the floor, restraints still clipped to its arms. A portable terminal sat nearby, its screen shattered, its circuit boards charred. One a torture room. It was a workstation. One of the maintenance men cursed softly. This shouldn't be here. On the wall behind the chair was another message, written in black grease pencil. "The system doesn't hold us. We hold the system." Rennick turned to the officers. "Seal this. No one touches anything until I log it." But as she backed out, the hum returned, the same low, rhythmic pulse she'd first heard in the control room. She looked down the corridor where the shadows met the light. It was coming from the walls. It was coming from her radio. A distorted voice broke through, faint but deliberate. "Agent Rennick? They're watching the Watchers." She froze. "Who is this? You already know." Then silence. By the time she reached the command center, the warden was waiting with 2 federal marshals. They confiscated her notes, her laptop, and her credentials. "The Bureau's taking over," the warden said. "You're being reassigned, effective immediately." She tried to protest, but the marshals didn't look at her. They were watching the monitors, where the cell footage still played on loop. In one feed, the camera glitched again, showing static and, for a split second, the outline of a figure walking down a maintenance corridor that no longer existed on the blueprints. That night, in a motel 20 miles from Florence, Rennick couldn't sleep. The phrase kept echoing in her mind, "We hold the system." She scrolled through the last photos she had taken on her phone before the Bureau seized her equipment. One image, the tunnel chair, stood out. In the corner of the frame, almost invisible under the dust, was a painted emblem. A small circle enclosing a lightning bolt. She had seen that emblem once before, stamped on a classified case file from 2007. Project Custodian, a black-budget program designed to test counterintelligence resilience inside correctional systems. Its purpose, simulate breaches to expose weakness, but Project Custodian had been terminated officially. If what she found was real, then the escape wasn't an escape at all. It was a test. A controlled failure meant to measure how far ADX could bend before it broke. But if it was a test, where was the data going? And why had she been chosen to find it? Rennick didn't have answers. Only another message, slipped under her motel door sometime before dawn. "You're inside now." And below it, scrawled in the same black pencil as before, "Even a fortress can become a prison for those who built it." Snow returned to the valley as dawn thinned the sky. From her motel window, Maya Rennick watched wind lift powder off the plains and carry it toward the concrete crown of ADX. She had been cut off. Badge revoked. Laptop seized. A neat bureaucratic disappearance, carried out with smiles and signatures. Yet the message under her door lay on the desk beside the motel phone like a pulsing vein. "You are inside now." She dialed the one number left memorized from a life before clearance. An old mentor at Justice, who had taught her to trace systems, not suspects. "I need 5 minutes." she said, voice low. Last archival reference is 2007. Who owned it? A pause crackled. You're not supposed to know that name. I found its carcass under the electrical block at ADX. Static. A sigh. Custodian wasn't a carcass, it was a seed. They built simulated breaches into the guts of facilities to test resilience. Live fire audits. Red teams with invisible rosters. Who ran the red teams? Internal, external, contractors. Sometimes both. When we shut it down, pieces were already fused into operations. The ghost of it is in every control room. He hesitated. Be careful, Maya. Custodian had a habit of turning investigators into participants. He hung up before she could ask the only question that mattered. Who owns it now? She stared at the phone, the motel clock ticking loud. The envelope on the desk. You're inside now. Might as well have been a mirror. If Custodian had never really ended, then what she witnessed on D-Range wasn't a rogue escape. It was a demonstrator, a controlled failure. A story written to measure the warden's reactions, the system's elasticity, and her own choices. Her choices. She drove back to Florence with the kind of calm that follows a decision. The snow was heavier, road signs frosted white. At the perimeter checkpoint, she did stop. She turned onto the frontage road that skirted the utility easement and parked behind a berm of plowed ice. Wind hissed across the wire like steam. Far off, tower lights blinked through the white hair. Burner phone vibrated, unknown number. You found the chair, a voice said. Filtered, pale, unhurried. So you know the test isn't about doors. It's about allegiance. Who are you? That will do. You were in D negative 119. No one was in D negative 119. That's the point. She gripped the wheel until her knuckles paled. Then what did we see? What did you open? A story, he said. Every system believes itself too complex to be read. We gave it a story it couldn't resist. A phantom prisoner, a vanishing act, a manifesto in pencil. Watch what the fortress protects when it thinks it's bleeding. You'll learn who it serves. And who does it serve? A beat, not who it says. The line clicked off. The phone screen returned to the cheap, cheerful wallpaper it came with. Indifferent to the weight of what it had just carried, Maya sat in the parked car until the heater coughed lukewarm air. The ghost words nested inside the mentor's warning. Custodian turns investigators into participants. If the fortress had been reading her as much as she was reading it, then the messages weren't taunts. They were invitations. Choose a side, declare an allegiance, become a data point. She chose. She drove to town, to the only place that still traded in paper with no audit trail, a strip mall copy shop that smelled like toner and dust. She fed a folded sheet into the machine, any photographs she'd salvaged from her phone before the marshals took her gear. The chair, the shattered terminal, in the corner, almost invisible under grit, the emblem in a circle, lightning bolt. Custodian's brand. Like a maker's mark on a knife, she made 3 copies, sealed them in 3 envelopes, addressed to 3 people who did know one another, an attorney who had lost cases to sealed evidence, a reporter who still used payphones, and a freshman senator who had built a career on the phrase oversight. With teeth. She mailed them from 3 different boxes on 3 different streets. Then she went looking for Daniel Hughes' administrative segregation, held him in an echo that smelled of bleach. The officer at the desk looked at Maya's revoked badge and scoffed. She did blink. The warden ordered a supplemental interview. He wants this off the books. She set a blank folder on the counter and waited for the eternal dance of bureaucracy. Bluster, suspicion, resignation. The door buzzed. Hughes sat on the bunk as if he had been bracing for an impact that never came. The steel washed his face with cold light. The days in solitary had sanded it down to basic lines. You were framed, Maya said. Before he could speak, he snorted. I was used. I can live with the right word. Custodian, she said.